Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use the promo code DNVR25. You'll get 25% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I am your host, Drew Creasman. I am the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. Patrick Lyons, beat writer, as you well know, is out for the day, but joining us for this one, that's right, it's Drew Goodman Day on the podcast, everybody. You know him as the host of the Drew Goodman podcast. You know him, of course, as the voice of the Rockies on AT&T SportsNet. And speaking of that, I want to begin here, Goody, because it's a big launching off point. You know, the trade deadline goes down, Cubs roll into town, Rockies have a nice series, but I want to go inside now, perhaps dangerously, inside the mind of Drew Goodman.
You sure you want to do that, dude?
Let's see how this goes. But because I know that probably people don't realize that a lot of your job on a day-to-day basis is research and, making sure you've got everything about the team that's coming into town, who's on a hot streak, cold streak for the other guys. Oh, they just called up. Who is this guy? Oh, okay. I better make sure I'm pronouncing his name right. I better make sure I know a little bit about his story. I'm going to talk to people if he's maybe a lesser known prospect guy that was just called up. So when you look at a lineup, you go, it's Jeswani Vargas. We got
Janeshwi.
Okay, I was
Janeshwi. SH Janeshwi.
This is I can mess that up on this show. You've got to go on television and say his name.
And you know what? Honestly, there are times that, listen, you make mistakes. There are times you mispronounce. There are times you struggle with. And then there are times where there's a contradiction in how a guy's name's pronounced. The most notable, obviously, is Nolan Arenado for the first 5 years of his career. And then the last few, it's been Nolan Arenado. Yeah. And because I was able to, I went right to the source, and he was emphatic. I don't care. Half my family says Arenado, half says Arenado. I said, I gotta say one thing and not another. What do you want it to be? He goes, I don't know. And so we decided, because it all emanated, if you remember, from when he did that, the DIA train thing.
Right.
He said, this is Nolan Arenado. And I was on the train. I'm like, he just said Arenado. But yeah, there are guys who come up. I'll give you a guy tonight, man. It's funny you bring that up, Patrick. I called you Patrick. How about Drew? We have the same name, and I just
know, right?
the wrong one. That's where my head is right now, dude.
Talk about getting names right.
Right. So you have Sandy Alcantara or Sandy Alcantara.
Right.
And yesterday, the shortstop for the Cubs was Sergio Alcantara, is what we settled on. We talked about it. Seems like it went both ways, and how, it's phonetically, in his bio and then MLB pronunciations, and it's kind of, and then you a lot of times we've anglicized. I don't say just we. A lot of people have anglicized certain Latino names. I'll give you an example. Do you remember? Oh man, I'm trying to think back. Oh, I'm doing a bad job of remembering off the top. But there are certain names that were pronounced one way, and then some guys were comfortable with the having it anglicized and they referred to him as such. So yeah, but that's an important one, and one we probably screw up sometimes too.
And I imagine it doesn't make it any easier when a team rolls into town and it's all new people, just a whole bunch of dudes like the Cubs did. And first of all, you all did fantastically with that. And I thought I had a really good time educating the people on just who the heck these guys are. Because a lot of people didn't, you don't know. And so it's got to be interesting to call a series like that, and really going down the stretch, in the past in September, when teams could call up 15 extra guys, and you're just like, okay, how much do I need to know about this guy? Is he ever going to come into the game? It just gets wild these last couple of months, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, September sometimes becomes a little bit of March baseball, where there's a lot of guys when the 40-man rosters come into play. In the case of the Cubs, a couple of new guys, but the guys they received back for all the trades they made, most of those guys are still in the minor leagues. I think all those guys were in the minor leagues. They called up some of their, some of those guys that were playing, Drew, as you know, were veteran guys that, veteran journeyman type of guys that you look and you like the kid at first base the last couple of days was, he's 29 years of age. So it's not like, he's this 24-year-old prospect. He's kicked around and he's getting an opportunity with the Cubs, but, who knows where he'll be next year, right?
Right. Yeah. So it was, as we said, a good series to watch. It's been interesting watching this team since the trade deadline. Don't think we've talked too much with you about that. You see some of these young guys who, seem really motivated, and, Brendan Rodgers on a 12-game hit streak, stuff like that. John Gray, with all these comments that he's come out publicly and talked about wanting to be here in the future. And then you've got the flip side of it with, Trevor Story and some comments about being frustrated that he wasn't traded, and a lot of fan frustration that maybe the Rockies didn't more clearly define a direction one way or the other. That's, I think, the most common criticism that I've heard is that, some people would like to hear they're either going all in on trying to compete right now, or they really, which I don't think a lot of people believe they can do. I might be of a different mind there. Or the other way, tear everything down, which would have been, trading Trevor and, to some people, John Marquez, like all of these other people. And that didn't come to fruition. I think, as a lot of people, and maybe Trevor Story being one of them, feeling like they're in a little bit of purgatory here, despite the fact that the Rockies have played some really fun baseball lately.
Yeah. To your point, Drew, the Rockies over their last, I'm trying to remember my notes from yesterday, over their last 43 games now, which is more than a quarter of a season. Okay. They're 23-20. Now, is that Dodger-like the last few years? Of course not. It's not. But it's not, they had a good week of baseball and they went 5-2. They've been much better. And the main reason, again, as you well know, better than anyone, is that they're pitching really well. Their starting rotation's really good. In fact, if you look at the numbers for their starting rotation over the last 2+ months, they probably should be a lot better than whatever that record is. And it is slightly above 500. But we know that until recently, the offense has really been light, and the bullpen has not been good. Yeah. But to attack the trade deadline, and I know, because I've listened to you guys, and I know you guys attacked it vociferously because it was the main topic, naturally. Yeah. I understand. Let's leave Trevor aside for a second, Drew. Yeah. I understand that why they didn't move Daniel Bard. Even though Daniel Bard has struggled against lefties, Daniel Bard's a high-quality bullpen arm who's a leader, and he's and another aside is he's a great story. I know we can't get sentimental. It's about winning baseball games. The hardest thing for the Rockies to ever achieve and accumulate is pitching. Achieve quality pitching and accumulate quality pitching. Right. And especially at the bullpen level, guys, unless if they're doing really well and they're free agents, they're not signing with Colorado. We know that. I mean, especially when you look a few years ago when Jeff Bridich went out and signed Wade Davis, good first year.
Or you can overpay for him.
Yes, they overpaid. Brian Shaw was a risk because of the number of miles on his arm. And they knew Jake McGee, and Jake McGee's having a resurgence this year naturally with San Francisco. I thought those were all good moves, honestly, at the time, and that's baseball. They don't always work out. But Daniel Bard is a guy, I don't know if he'll be your closer when you're really good, and you have a chance to be really good in the short term because of that rotation. And that's why everything that they did is to, I'm hoping, to try to compete next year. And I mean legitimately compete, because they have a rotation in their prime Not, hey, this guy we really think 2 years down the road can be good. Herman's great, right? We know that. Kyle Freeland has been outstanding,
Right.
and he's been there before. These guys have postseason experience. John Gray is pitching better than he ever has. Austin Gomber has been really good. The last one-inning start aside, has been really good. Senzatella, back of the rotation guy, but somebody you can trust, right?
Yeah.
They have this nucleus. You don't know how long they stay healthy, how long they're effective, because we know pitching it comes and goes very quickly. There are very few Justin Verlanders out there. I know he's been hurt with the Tommy John who have a career of dominance, or Max Scherzer, those guys, or Clayton Kershaw. Those guys are going to the Hall of Fame for a reason. So if you take that nucleus, which is the most important and the most elusive for the Rockies, you go, we got to win now. And I think that Billy Schmidt certainly understands that. And that's why they look at Bard and go, okay, you know what? This is still a quality arm. And even if he eventually is not our closer, he's somebody who can be a setup guy. Maybe he is the closer. I don't know. And I think that's why they pulled him off the table. Going now to Trevor's Story, and forgive me for getting so long-winded, Drew, but Story, they placed a value on him. I don't know what was offered. And maybe what was offered was not as much as they thought, clearly, they were going to get. And maybe he was affected by, he's had a subpar year. He'd be the first to tell you he's had a subpar year. There's some question because he doesn't rip the ball across the diamond.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him do that in a while. And it's a 2-month rental. So maybe some of that was diminished. And the Rockies have confidence in weighing the mathematical equation, the financial equation, that they were better off, trying to sign him if they can. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to at the end of this, in the offseason, take a compensatory pick.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was looking at that, and a lot of people, and I agreed that I think the closest comparison, and every situation is different, but there were a lot of people pointing to what the New York Mets did by getting Javier Baez for Pete Crow Armstrong. And the more I dig deeply into that, I think that actually gives you the roadmap for why the Rockies ended up doing what they did. Because if you look at the advanced metrics, Javier Baez has been about twice as valuable as Trevor Story this year. And the Mets aren't getting Trevor Story's resume. They aren't getting his career WAR. They're getting 2 months of the ball player that he is right now, or they're getting that from Baez right now, right? And he was clearly having the better and healthier season. And if that gets you this prospect that was ranked 7th in their system, was the 19th pick last year, you push that value back just a little bit for the value of Story, and you go, yeah, that's a compensatory draft pick. That's exactly that's the future value that they have right now in Chris McMahon. Or
exactly. I'm trying to look something up for before, like the Mets. People go, hey, they got Armstrong from the Mets. Armstrong wasn't the number 1 prospect in the Mets organization. He wasn't a number 2 prospect in the Mets organization. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, he was a number 5 prospect in the Mets organization, right?
Something I saw actually had him. The thing I looked up today had him at 7th. So
okay, so
yeah,
and I think there's a misunderstanding or a misnomer that Trevor Story, he's going to get you a starting pitcher and the top 2 prospects in some in the Yankees organization. No, he's not for 2 months. I mean, people are going, the Mets, or who was the trade with the one I'm thinking, Javi Baez with the Cubs.
Yeah.
Okay, Armstrong, he's never played a minute in the big leagues. He's known right now as a really good defensive outfield prospect. The bat is a little bit light.
He's played 6 games of low A baseball.
Thank you. We have no idea what this guy's going to be. And because all the talking heads like us and the writers say, the Cubs kicked ass. They traded Javi Baez, who was going to be a free agent, and they got the number 5 or number 7 prospect in the Mets organization. Really? Guess what?
Okay.
Whoever the Rockies draft in the compensatory portion of the first round,
yeah,
he will immediately become probably a top 5 prospect in the Rockies organization. I know the Rockies organization is not super deep now. They are starting to add some players. Zach Veen's coming on. We can talk about that at a later date. But he immediately becomes a top 5 prospect, right?
Right.
In all likelihood,
right.
Top 5, top 6.
That's about where Drew Romo is right now, right?
And Drew Romo is probably going to go up because he's having a heck of a first year as a professional. And his bat, everyone, Drew Romo was thought to be the best defensive high school catcher in the country. They thought, we'll see what happens with the bat. Yeah. And listen, I know he's in Fresno. He's in low A ball. Drew, you study this because I listen to you all the time. Drew Romo has been really good with the bat in the Cal League.
Yeah.
And that has been a pleasant surprise. That doesn't mean, 4 years from now, we're going to say, oh, yeah, this guy's, a 25 home run backstop. I hope he is. We all hope he is.
Sure.
But he's doing nicely, and he was a, compensatory pick.
Yeah. But last point that I'll make on this, because I did it once before on the show. Patrick and I actually ran through a long list of examples, but it's always easy to say that teams who sold won on the day of, because you're projecting on guys like Pete Crow Armstrong. He may never play a game in the big leagues. I hope he does. I like you. Look, you root for young players. But we went back and looked at, the Seattle trade of Cliff Lee for Justin Smoke and a bunch of dudes did nothing for their future. The Houston trade of Roy Oswalt did nothing for their future. The sellers are very, very rarely winners at the trade deadline. They feel like they are because you got a bunch of guys for nothing. But if those guys don't turn into anything, so that's why I think
look no further. Listen, and it's easy when you're a fan of a team to beat up your team when a trade doesn't work or a high pick doesn't pan out. Look at every team. Look at the LA Dodgers. I've done this, and I know you've done this, but I'm imploring the audience to do this because now you have so many tools at your disposal with the internet and all the different sites.
Sure. Go to Baseball Reference.
Right. Those, it's not private to you and I as members of the media community, if you will. So the Rockies and the Dodgers have missed on picks. The Dodgers have missed on trades.
Yeah.
The Rockies, when they traded Ubaldo Jimenez, people say, man, they got a ton back for Ubaldo. They got 2 number 1 picks back-to-back years in Drew Pomerantz and Alex White, and then he got a couple other guys that were, mid-level type prospects. None of those guys panned out in a Rockies uniform. Pomerantz has had a nice career as a bullpen piece.
Right.
A nice career. None of those guys could panned out.
Right.
You go back to the Tulowitzki deal. And they had to take the Jose Reyes thing, and we'll push that aside naturally. But they got Jeff Hoffman. They said, hey, the Rockies did well. They got the 9th pick in the draft, a guy that was talked about as maybe being the number 1 pick in the draft before he had Tommy John. Really good get for the Rockies for Tulowitzki. Jeff Hoffman never panned out.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about these. We're all kind of that, and that's why, I get if people are like, "Damn, I really wish they'd have done something else." I think that's a perfectly reasonable position to hold, if not the reasonable position to hold. What I can't help but chuckle at a little bit is, and I've made this analogy before, is people really upset that they got this lottery ticket instead of that lottery ticket. And I'm just I get it, but at the end of the day, we're arguing over the difference between this and this.
This is where, if you want to look at it from 10,000 feet, and what I'm about to present takes it takes chutzpah, and you can't get sentimental about players. If you thought, and it's your business to try to really determine if you're going to be able to sign a guy long term. If you thought, man, it does not look good to sign Trevor Story, and when they were trading Nolan to also trade Trevor, that would have taken a lot of, like I said, chutzpah to do it then, because we know how angry the Rockies fan base was, and many, I suppose, still are, if you did both of those guys in one fell swoop, even if they were different trades, I'm not saying they were packaged together.
Right.
You're going to get more for Trevor at that point in time because whoever did the deal with, he was getting a full year with Trevor, and now he's in their, he's in their community and he's in their culture, and maybe they feel if it's a wealthy team, they feel they have a better chance at re-signing him. That's not how the Rockies, have done things. They've never done things like Tampa where, yeah, that's fine. We'll trade Blake Snell in the offseason, and, we'll trade Evan Longoria. They, I'm sure, are warm to their players when they have them, but they have no problem moving them. That's never been, the Rockies' MO, right or wrong. But if you wanted to maximize what you were going to get for Trevor Story, you would have had to have a lot of courage and do it in the offseason.
Yeah. That would have been a tough pill for fans to swallow for sure. But I think you're 100% right about that. Before we get you out of here, let's talk a little bit about the baseball in the field lately. And I think it actually even connects with this conversation about, how quickly can they turn it around? Because you mentioned the starting pitching, and that's been great as of late. But then you start looking, and I was saying this to Patrick on yesterday's episode about how I've had this weird sensation the last couple of weeks where when you get to the Rockies 7 and 8 hitters, I'm almost more excited to watch those at bats than I am the rest of the lineup. And I can't remember. I've been following this team a while. And it's not because they're necessarily better or they're awesome, but you see Elias Diaz or Sam Hilliard, or when he gets plugged in there for a game right now, Jonathan Daza, who hadn't been doing as well, but we know what he's capable of. We've seen these moments, and you want to know, you want to see. And lately, of course, with Diaz and Hilliard, they've been putting on a show. But maybe with more central pieces like Brendan Rodgers, obviously you're getting more excited about that. Ryan McMahon, maybe not the super duper star just yet we thought he'd be, but clearly cementing himself as a guy who more than belongs at the big league level, as one of the best defenders in baseball. And, he's still going to hit probably 25 home runs and all that. And you go, well, maybe this team, and I understand the quality of competition they just played. I really, really do. But maybe this team isn't quite so far away as they looked at the beginning of the year, when a whole lot of people were happy to say it's an easy 100-loss team that's going to be the worst team in baseball and all of that. Maybe they've always been just a little bit better than that, especially as these young guys gain some more experience.
Well, Drew, a couple thoughts on that. Number one, I've always said this, in life, in athletics, in whatever your vocation is, whatever your business, you have a right to get better, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully you have the fortitude to want to do everything you can to get better. Certainly professional athletes, you would think, would fall into that category, especially young professional athletes at the major league level. So we are seeing Sam Hilliard better. We're certainly seeing Elias Diaz better. We're seeing great growth with Brendan Rodgers, who much is expected of. So when you evaluate those guys going into the 22 off-season, 21-22 off-season, as you suggest, you have a different view of those guys than you did perhaps going into the 21 season. I said this on my podcast this week, and I'm going to reiterate it here. Hope is not a plan, where you put your fingers together and I hope that a couple of these guys out of nowhere become superstars. It's awesome if that happens, right? But you have to augment potential good stories with legitimate baseball moves to further augment what we were talking about earlier, this really good rotation that they have.
Right.
Now, I've said this many times. I've said it with you and Patrick. I think at least 20 teams, and I haven't broken this down, I think at least 20 teams would take their rotation and trade it for the Rockies rotation if the Rockies would allow that.
Right.
That's how good I think this group is. So now what do you do in the offseason to address – I'll leave the bullpen aside because that's another animal.
Sure.
But to address an offense that's been much better, and you've talked about it, Drew, it's been much better, but it needs to take another couple of strides.
Yeah.
I would look, and we'll delve into this when the three of us chat on ensuing shows, and certainly in the off season when we're chit-chatting away. and I'll do it as well on my podcast. You try to go get the Michael Kadires and the Justin Morneaus of the world, a couple of those guys that are, 31, 32, really good pros, can still help you, and they're, 2 or 3 year times, $12 to $15 million, somewhere in there, where it's not, 180 million, 200 million. It's reasonable. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel if it doesn't work.
Yep.
Daniel Murphy falls into that category. And I'm sitting here right now. I'll be the first to raise my hand. And even though I was, like everyone, really disappointed that DJ was allowed to walk out the door, and again, Dick Monfort's on record as saying he wishes he had a mulligan on that one. But I like the Daniel Murphy signing. I thought he was going to hit 40 doubles and 20 homers and hit 320 in a Rockies uniform because he was that good a hitter. I know he wasn't a good defender. He got hurt, and it never worked out. But that ilk of player, 2 of those guys, and then you still are going to have Rogers, who I think has a chance to be outstanding. Another growth year from McMahon, and then you can go back now to the hope part of this, and go, hey, what if Sam Hilliard? What if Connor Joe? What if Elias Diaz really becomes a guy?
Yeah,
and I don't mean a 40 homer guy, but like they're all guys. They're all really solid to good big leaguers. Now people will look at the Rockies a little bit differently, and now you have a good offense to augment what you expect to be a really good rotation for the next couple of years. That's controllable, assuming you can sign John Gray.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Actually, somebody even said to me the other day, and I don't necessarily agree with this assessment, but this idea that the Rockies are kind of putting off superstars, that Nolan's mad at them, that Trevor's mad at them, and so superstars aren't going to want to sign here. And I said to this person, you know what? I don't know that that's true, but if it is, that might be the biggest blessing in disguise for this franchise, because they've had superstars on big old honking contracts going back to Todd Helton and Carlos Gonzalez and Trevor Story and then Nolan Arenado. And it's tough to be flexible and build the rest of your team that way. And I said almost exactly what you just said. I said they don't need to go out and sign one superstar player to come in here and replace Trevor or whatever it may be and anchor their offense. They need 2 or 3 really solid veterans who know how to make the most out of it, who can be gap-to-gap hitters, hit 25-plus home runs. I would like them to play solid defense, because I do think pitching and defense and run prevention has to be the identity of the Rockies. But the same way in the bullpen, going out and signing the 3 best relievers on the market at the time to fix your biggest issue made perfect sense. But it didn't work out that way. What you needed was 6 relievers making half that amount of money so that you could mix and match when one of them didn't work out. And I agree with you here. I think, and then you can go back to, you mentioned the Connor Joes or the Elias Diaz, the Sam Hilliard. That was DJ LeMahieu in 2015. You look at that team and you weren't going, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be a star player. His numbers were pedestrian. He was a good fielder, hit for some contact. He was okay. And so those guys, that can happen, and you got to allow the possibility for it. But I agree with you 100% there. You go out and augment just right around this pitching staff. There's talent here that can be allowed to blossom in a special way if you get those reliable veterans. And then as we keep kind of putting off, bullpens are crapshoots, man. You go out and you never quite know. You sign just the right guy, and now all of a sudden Daniel Bard's your 7th inning guy, and you've got some lightning dynamics at the end of your bullpen. You're a completely different ball club.
Yeah, and what if Chassin, who's worn so many different hats as a big league pitcher, right. What if he's a legit setup guy? He's been a legit setup guy the last 3-4 weeks. He's done a really good job. I think he's got a scoreless streak going to somewhere around 11 innings. He's got a slow heartbeat, been there, done that.
Yeah.
The stuff plays up a little bit in short stints. All of a sudden, he's been throwing, he's touched 95 a bunch of times. I didn't think he had that in him anymore.
Right.
And you need good stories. Every team needs good stories. Heck, look at the Dodgers, who spend more money than anybody. And it's an embarrassment of riches. It's almost comical, the talent they can roll out there. We did this off air yesterday, Drew, and we put their best lineup when everyone's healthy. We put their best lineup out there, and AJ Pollock was on the bench unless the DH is in play. Albert Pujols was on the bench, right? And Albert's been good for them. And I know, he's on the 18th green, but he's been good for them. And listen, Pollock's a heck of a player. That's how deep they are. But guess what? They still have had good stories seemingly out of nowhere. And we point immediately to Max Muncy and Chris Taylor.
Right.
Max Muncy, Chris Taylor. So if the Rockies, again, can augment, but have a couple of good stories, and we see some of that brewing, Sam Hilliard can cut his strikeout rate down, 6-7%, kind of like he's been doing lately. That's a special talent.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. We will indeed see. That's why they go out there and do it and play the games, because again, it's like, you go back and look at some of our preseason shows, and we were confident that this was a 2-team race out west between the Dodgers and the Padres. Nobody had the Giants.
No one had the Giants.
Nobody had the Giants.
No one. Here's what, Drew, this. This is what
Atlanta,
our industry does. They look and they go, okay, Mookie Betts, check, great player. Cody Ballinger, check, great player. This guy's a really high prospect. Ruiz, for instance, if he was still at the Dodgers, if he comes up, he's going to help them because he's ranked, among the top prospects in baseball.
Right.
And then a year later, there are surprises that take place, like Jake Cronenworth, for instance, with the Padres now. I mean, he was originally with Tampa.
Right.
And so Jake Cronenworth, now you evaluate him, go, oh, man, that's a hell of a guy. High on base, hits the ball out of the ballpark, hits gap to gap, can play multiple positions. Was anybody on Jake Cronenworth predicting that a year ago, 2 years ago?
Right.
So,
meanwhile, Cody Ballinger, I think, has been the 4th worst qualified hitter in baseball this year.
Right.
And I think he got drafted in our superstars when we were just taking people most likely to win MVP this year. Somebody picked Cody Ballinger, as you would going into the year.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, last time I checked, he already won an MVP.
Yeah, seems a solid bet. So, the prognostications can be fun. They just don't mean a whole lot.
Well, I look at it. I do look at it a little bit this way. People in front offices in whatever sport we're talking about, they have to first guess. I'm stealing a line from Clint Hurdle. It's really easy when you and I and Drew and Patrick do a podcast the next day and go, hey, why did the manager pinch hit in this situation, or why didn't he stick with so-and-so? And when it doesn't work out, we can Monday morning quarterback that and second guess that. But managers, GMs, they have to first guess. And when you are in the opinion business, you throw out your opinion, and most of the time you throw it against the wall, and you always will point to the one that say, I remember that. I said that. The other 9 that fall down and slip down the chalkboard and you were completely wrong, you don't point to those. So listen, this is not to say the Rockies haven't made mistakes and haven't wish they did business at times differently. I think every organization does that. The Rockies may handle things in a more unique way than the traditional, let's trade our guy at the deadline and we got prospects back. So as you said earlier, everybody celebrates you because you got prospects back and therefore you had to have done better than in the case of Trevor Story taking a compensatory pick. As I said, we'll see. We'll see on that one. But I do believe that this does not have to be in the next couple of years a franchise that's bad. I do think with the right moves and a little bit of good fortune where these guys continue to grow, the Rockies can be very, very competitive. And hopefully what I mean by that is a contender in the short term. And there's a ton of people I understand who won't agree with me. And that does not mean that they don't have to improve their system. They have to get much deeper than they've been in their system. I think the lower minor leagues certainly look a lot better right now than the upper portions of the minor leagues. There's a lot of work to be done. Their analytics department, some guys have left, and so they have to build that back up again. And it all begins with a plan. And if Billy Schmidt ends up being the full-time general manager, I know for a fact he has ideas and plans on how to do some of those things. So again, it's a new group and it's an open canvas. But to my original point, and one that you concur with, I think the Rockies can be a factor next year with the right signings in the offseason.
Yeah. All right. I think that's as good a place. We'll let you go on that. We'll plug. You had Sully on the show this week.
Yeah, we did a lot of we did
stuff.
Similar stuff.
Yeah,
through to what you and I, have done today, and certainly what you and Patrick were doing, from the weekend forward. And that is, kind of break down where the Rockies are. And Sully's an interesting guy to talk to about that. The player background, certainly. Now the broadcaster background, somebody who follows the team, passionately on a day-to-day basis. But also, Corey's a really smart guy, and he has interests potentially one day in getting involved in a front office. So he looks at it from, maybe a different perspective than just somebody who used to play and is now, a talking head on television. So we kicked a bunch of things around, and I think it'll be a good listen. And that's the Drew Goodman podcast. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Everyone, make sure you go and listen to that. I love talking to Sully about his ideas. He's great. He's got all.
Yeah, he's great. He's ideas. Great. Yeah, he's never. Corey, like all of us, right? We've never shown an opinion.
That's absolutely right. So make sure as soon as we're done here, we're going to let Goody go. I've got a few more thoughts before we do, but then go and listen to the Drew Goodman podcast on whatever podcast app you are using. Thanks again, Goody. We'll see you next time.
Drew, have a good one, man. And best to Patrick. He's doing the right things. Wife's birthday today, right?
Right. Happy birthday to Robin.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Robin. And we'll talk to you in a few days, brother.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. See you, Drew.
All right. Since we did have limited time with Goody today, I left off. I didn't want to use any of it there early on too many of these ad reads. So let me get you a whole bunch here. We've got, of course, our friends over at Hassel Cattle Company. They have the beef, man. They got so much delicious beef. They've got sausages. They've got ground beef. They've got ground chuck. They've got award-winning hamburgers. They got steaks. They got bacon. The bacon's so good. Go to HassellCattleCompany.com. That's HASSELL cattlecompany.com. Use the promo code DNVR10. They will hook you up with 10% off. And if you order over $200, which I always do, you'll get free shipping. It's so good. I've got 100% positive reviews on this stuff. Not joking with you, 100% positive reviews. So if you enjoy beef at all, I highly, highly recommend. You will not be disappointed. Treating the animals well, treating your body well, treating the environment well, your wallet, all that good stuff. Again, it's HASSELL cattlecompany.com. And of course, about our friends over at the DraftKings Sportsbook, best place to get a little betting in on your sports these days. I've been doing a lot of over-unders on strikeouts, who's going to get hits, who's going to get home runs. Less and less on the over and unders on total runs scored. That's been a little bit more difficult these days, predicting which games are going to be high scoring, which games are going to be low scoring. A lot of fun in the Olympics, just hopping on there, seeing who are the favorites, maybe rooting for the underdog, getting some of the long odds, stuff like that has been a whole lot of fun. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits if America wins a medal. They will. Let's code DNVR to turn $1 into $100 in free credits for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, new customers only, restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. And of course, I got to let you know about our friends at Ball. I am so super duper excited. That's right. I said it. I'm that much of a nerd that I am literally super duper excited about our new sponsor, Ball. Yes, that Ball is in Ball Arena. Ball Aerospace Technology, the world's largest aluminum can and packaging manufacturer. They do really fantastic work making sustainable materials, thinking about the environment first, thinking about their employees first. basically being just a fantastic member of the community, whether you're talking about sort of the Denver area, Colorado, the United States, the world. They're a phenomenal member of the community. You can get involved right now. They're looking to add at their Golden plant for all kinds of positions, making 8, 12, 16-ounce can sizes, growlers, all kinds of fun, cool, fantastic stuff if you're interested in that type of creation. So right here in Golden, you can check out #WorkAtBall online and apply for a position at their aluminum can plant by texting Golden to 77222 or go to jobs.ball.com and search Golden. That's jobs.ball.com and search Golden, or simply text Golden to 77222. And last one for you. Of course, hope all this is putting a big smile on your face. Our smiles are all brought to you by our friends over at Green Mountain Dental, located just 15 minutes outside of downtown Denver in the Lakewood area. If you go down there, schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam, they'll hook you up with a free Sonicare toothbrush. They'll treat you like family. They know their sports. Got to get some teeth work done. Get it done with our friends at Green Mountain Dental. All right, I wanted to get to a few final thoughts, a little bit on the prospects here, which I see is mostly what the YouTube chat is questioning about. I said Hayden talking about, don't know about all this, boys. Rocks have one prospect in the ESPN top 50. And, you know, we've talked about this a little bit before, and that's something we're going to have to, you know, continue to keep our eyes on. I would suspect by the next time those lists come around, that's going to be different. I'll say that for now. You know, there's a lot of conversation about, you know, how fairly are the Rockies prospects evaluated, and how difficult do the Rockies make that on people to evaluate their prospects. And so they sort of don't get the benefit of the doubt. But the Rockies not getting the benefit of the doubt, whether they deserve it or not, really doesn't change what some of these ball players are or are not going to accomplish. Zach Veen has obviously been fantastic so far. He's the guy that has the highest future value of anybody in the Rockies system, probably pretty comfortably. And he's been great so far. But some of these other guys who are coming along, Colby talking about, and I saw a few guys earlier mentioning Ezekiel Tovar has been fantastic. Adiel Amador. We were talking about Drew Romo earlier. Of course, it hurts that the Rockies' top pitching prospects, and now Peter Lambert, I think, has graduated from prospect status. But so, he exists still there at the higher level. Ryan Rollison, who mostly hasn't been healthy all year, so he hasn't really had an opportunity to increase his prospect status, and he may ultimately end up in the big leagues before he was ever really able to be a top 50 prospect. But again, remember, before he debuted, Trevor Story was not a top 100 prospect. Charlie Blackmon was not a top 100 prospect. Ryan McMahon, these guys had dropped out. Nolan was, Brendan Rodgers was, John Gray was, but a lot of these other players, so it's, and I get those designations, but that's why I try not to run too far away from them. Again, it is still the case that the Rockies farm system does need to get better, but it is also simultaneously the case that they are getting better. Michael Toglia has had a really fantastic season, was really good in the futures game, has been advanced to Double-A and is settling in nicely. And Jake brings up a great point here in the comments as well, that without a 2020 minor league season, it's really hard to tell where any of the prospects were before the season. There's still, and there's still a lot of that being ironed out. So again, I'm not going completely the other direction when people say, oh, the Rockies farm system is rough and needs to get better. I'm not saying actually it's great. It's one of the best. They're in the top 5 and you people just don't get it. That is not my position. My position is that it's actually probably a little bit better than people are, not a lot, a little bit better than is currently being reported. There are some weird nuances of, like I said, guys who just technically don't count as prospects anymore, like a Peter Lambert, guys that really aren't being thought of right now. Colton Welker being on suspension, so he's had no opportunity to increase his prospect status, and he had probably been the fastest riser in the Rockies system. Another really fast riser who hit a big 2-run home run as part of a 3-hit game last night. In the higher, now we've talked about the lower levels of the minors, most people actually believe are pretty good. It's the higher levels where they feel bereft of talent, but that's also where they've got Peter Lambert, Ryan Rollison, Colton Welker. There's not a whole lot of Sam Hilliard, if we're counting that, where is he at in those? And so, Colby, the Fresno and Spokane teams are definitely where most of that hope is, right? And it's nice that as of right now, most of the Rockies' top prospects are performing well. Eleuteros, I'm close. I think I got close. Eleuteros Montero, who of course came over in the Nolan Arenado deal, was just named Minor League Player of the Month. He's on an absolute tear, is Montero. And so right at this, and he is enlisted. So maybe by next year, we're talking about him as a top 100 or top 50 prospect. There are a lot of these guys. So that's my way of saying it may even be rightfully the case. Some of these guys might be being overlooked, but if Valade or Welker or Rollison or Montero or an improving Drew Romo, or once we start to see Benny Montgomery or Chris McMahon, who's been really good. Like the Rockies have a lot of guys in that next group who by this time next year, I think we're going to be talking about as top 100 prospects. And then of course, they'll have another draft. They're going to do, they're probably going to have a compensatory pick that we keep talking about. And we'll see what they do with all of that. And, by all accounts also, they just had a really, really good draft. And I don't know, to what extent Jaden Hill is a perfect example of this, right? Like, how do you evaluate Jaden Hill and rank him as a prospect right now? The guy's thrown like 45 or 50 innings in college because of Tommy John surgery. But right before that was considered a talent good enough to go 1-1 overall in baseball. So should we treat him like a guy with that kind of talent? In which case, he could arguably go right to being the top Rockies' top prospect, even over Zach Veen. Like Jaden Hill this time a year from now might be the Rockies' top prospect, or certainly second best. If Veen keeps doing his thing, it's going to be tough to unseat him. The guy's got like Cody Ballinger comps from day one. But again, even Zach Veen, I don't think was expected ever to go 1-1 in his draft, with Torkelson was always going to do that, right? So you look at a guy like Jaden Hill, and AJ, our guy AJ Hafley, who you all know from our Avs coverage, keeps really pumping me up on Jaden Hill and get me excited about that. But back to other questions, we know prospects can be a bit of a crapshoot as well. And so the Rockies are going to have to go out in this offseason and sign some impact bats and totally retool the bullpen. And it does look like that's their plan. And so while, this will kind of be my bow on that final point, is that I 100% understand anyone who's going, I don't like that plan, but I do think that Bill Schmidt and Drew Goodman, who, he's not like an arm of the team or anything, but he's a lot closer to the team and understanding their way of thinking and having those kinds of conversations than most of the people on the outside, even writers who've been there for a very long time, right? And so at the very least, I think we can say this is the Rockies' plan. We know what it is now. Disagree with it all you want, but I will push back a little bit when people say the Rockies have no plan. They have no direction. They may have one you think is absolutely pie in the sky nonsense, right? That they're going to compete next year against the Dodgers and the Padres by signing a couple of quality bats and hoping for the best. I get it. I get why a lot of people would say you're nowhere close to that level. You don't need 3 or 4 or 5 new players here. You need 15 new players here. I get why that's some people's position. It isn't mine, but I find it to be a reasonable one. But I will push. I think they've made it clear at this point. I think Bill Schmidt with his comments, we'll see if he's the long-term GM, but at least as of right now, this is what they're doing. Trying to build around this starting pitching staff and augment, as they said, going forward with these free agent targets in the offseason. And until we see exactly what those are, it's going to be difficult for me to say they absolutely can't do that. Because I've looked at some names and thought, there might be some guys here to make this happen. Will asking if for whatever reason Story accepts and signs a 1-year qualifying offer contract, are there any restrictions on trading him in the same offseason, say at the winter meetings? I'd have to double check on if there are any restrictions against that. But I did have this thought really in earnest for the first time the other day. Patrick had brought it up on the show, and I had more or less dismissed it as him sort of theory crafting. And I still think it's highly, highly unlikely that he accepts the qualifying offer. Jeez, excuse me. All of a sudden I'm getting, I think it's highly, highly unlikely that happens. But if he really continues to struggle, now he may have come out of it lately, right? He's had some home runs lately, had the big game yesterday. So if he totally comes out of it, no, I don't think that's very likely, but it would be interesting. It sure would be interesting if he ended up back on the team, especially after a lot of people assumed his comments meant he wanted out of here as fast as possible, less than he meant he just wanted to go play some competitive baseball somewhere, and kind of decided that's what was going to happen. I don't think it's an impossibility anymore. If he continues to struggle, he may just go, you know what? I need to rebuild myself. I need to come back out, play better next year. And if that's what earns him the next contract, and he feels he can do it here as well as signing a 1-year deal somewhere else, the way Marcus Semien did, especially considering the turmoil of the CBA negotiations, maybe he just goes, I'm going to let all of that sort itself out. I'll take the qualifying offer to make $18 or $19 million to play in a place I've been comfortable my whole career. And then either the Rockies can turn around and say, hey, we've still got Trevor, and we can either trade him then and get something for him, rendering all of this other stuff moot. Or if their plan really is to build and win, and you think Trevor on a rebound, still, new contract year with pieces that you've brought in with the money that you've saved from the Nolan deal and this young starting pitching staff and whatever else, and now he's a part of it and your team is much better, maybe he doesn't have to leave at all. That's incredibly far-fetched. I just painted a very rainbowy picture for the potential future of the Rockies and Trevor Story. He almost certainly will just decline the qualifying offer and go somewhere else. And someone will take a chance on him and give him at least the 1-year deal for big money. Especially once they're like doctors and stuff can take a look at him in an offseason and find that he's healthy. But interesting question to consider, Will, because it's not necessarily the slam dunk that I thought it was before. So worth remembering. All right, I think that'll do it for today. Appreciate you all hanging out with us for this one. Really, of course, appreciate Drew Goodman for coming on, sharing his thoughts about everything going on down there. I appreciate you all for taking the time to listen to all of that. I know, there's a lot of frustration and anger and wanting to just kind of get out the pitchforks and burn it all down. And I understand that too, but I think it's worth everyone's time to listen earnestly to the argument of the people on the other side and try to see what they are seeing. And I appreciate Goody coming on here and making that argument. And I, appreciate that this will be a conversation that continues to be an argument moving forward as well. It should be. So join us for this weekend. Should be a fun series with the Marlins coming to town. Some really good pitching matchups. The offenses of, we'll see. But we're going to find out. It's been fun baseball as of late. I know I've really been enjoying watching the games. If you have been too, make sure you're subscribed to the DNVR.com so you can come hang out with us in the Discord channel so you can chant Joe alongside with us, or Broad every time Brendan Rodgers does something cool, which has been a lot lately. It's just been so much fun in the Discord channel, hanging out, having a blast. So come hang out with us there. Subscribe to the DNVR.com for hats and shirts and the discounts on those things. But by the way, although you do get a free shirt when you sign up for the annual right now, the Discord channel, all the other stuff, the bigger beer down at the DNVR bar, all that cool stuff you get just for being a member of the family. Of course, follow on social media at Drew Creasman, at Patrick D. Lyons, at Drew Goodman 42, at DNVR _Rockies. all that good stuff. We appreciate you for being the absolute best baseball fans in the world out there. I can only ever promise you that I will continue to be absolutely Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, I will see you at the ballpark.